In a modern society, economic calculation is performed in companies and also by individuals using accounting. Goethe wrote that double-entry bookkeeping was one of the finest inventions of the human mind. And he was right. However, accounting was not invented nor discovered. Accounting is the result of an evolutionary process. Accounting is the language of business, and like any language, it was not discovered by anyone. Instead, generations and generations of thousands of traders and entrepreneurs who needed to determine whether they were making profits or losses on their business, industrial and craft projects, gradually developed the wonder that is double-entry accounting. The first records of double-entry accounting have been found in different archaeological excavations in Egypt, and they date back to the Ptolemaic period. And certainly in the commercial and trading cities of the Middle Ages, in medieval Italy, in Venice, Florence, Pisa, and also in Spain, in Barcelona, in the 13th and 14th centuries, double-entry accounting was already highly developed. The first book about accounting was written by a Franciscan monk named Luca Pacioli, who taught mathematics to Leonardo da Vinci. Some ignorant people conclude that Pacioli invented accounting. Nothing could be further from the truth. What he did was to systematically formulate knowledge that had already slowly evolved over a very lengthy period of time, like languages evolve. Spanish and English, for instance. Accounting ultimately takes the form of two statements. One statement is a kind of, we could call it a photograph of the wealth of a company or an individual. This sort of photograph of a given instant is called a balance sheet. A balance sheet is a photo of the goods, rights and obligations which a person or company has at a given instant. For example, let's write December the 31st, 2009. In accordance with tradition and custom, the left side is labelled assets and the right side liabilities. On the asset side, you record the value at market prices. We won't go into the debate about whether using historical costs is better. You record the estimated value at market prices of the goods and rights you own, or the company owns. In other words, what you have, goods and rights. And on the right side, the liabilities side, you record the value of the obligations you have to third parties, what you owe, obligations and debts. Okay, well, double-entry accounting is based on the principle that both sides of the equation, thus we call it double entry, always add up to the same amount. The difference between the two, the amount necessary to make liabilities equal assets, is called owner's equity, or equity capital. It consists of capital and reserves, the owner's equity of the company. Obligations and owner's equity comprise the liabilities, which always add up to the same amount as the assets. Well, another more important statement exists, and it is a movie. We're not talking about still images anymore, but a movie. This statement is called a profit and loss account. A profit and loss account does not capture a given instant. It is not a photograph, but a movie of events throughout the year, from January the 1st to December the 31st, throughout the financial year. The movie reflects daily income and expenses. By long-established tradition, the left side of this statement is labelled debit. Don't ask me why, that's just the way it is. The right side is labelled credit. Please take note, on the debit side we record expenses, and on the credit side we record income. And in the end, both sides must balance. They must always add up to the same final result. How can that be possible? Well, it's very simple. If income exceeds expenses, and that is what I wish for all of you, you will have to add something here to make both sides balance. and that something consists of the profits of the financial year, or if you prefer, it is the credit balance of the profit and loss account. It is the profit, and if you add in that amount, both sides will balance. If the opposite is true, and expenses exceed income, then you will have to add something to income, and that something will be the losses of the financial year, or the debit balance of the profit and loss account. All of this is possible thanks to the existence of market prices, which enable us to estimate the value of the goods and services available to us, and to calculate income and expenses. Economic calculation is an essential guide to action. It offers us the support we need to be able to cope with obstacles in an environment of uncertainty. Economic calculation is not perfect. It rests on monetary prices, which, as we will see, are expressed in a monetary unit. The euro, for example, with a purchasing power that is constantly changing. Moreover, a series of goods and services fall outside the sphere of trade. They are called res extra commercium. They are not bought nor sold, and therefore they have no market prices and cannot be the object of economic calculation. For example, honor, heroism, honesty. When I was a schoolboy, I remember listening to a song that went, "True love can't be bought nor sold. El cariño verdadero ni se compra ni se vende. There is no price for a kilo of love." We cannot make numerical calculations based on it, nor include it in our accounting. Love may influence our actions and decisions, however, but these must be the result of direct comparisons. Economic calculation is of no assistance there. Nevertheless, thank God, the vast majority of the actions in which we are involved are made much easier by the existence of market prices and the possibility of using accounting to determine whether we are making a profit or a loss in what we are doing. Honor, virtue, glory, health and life are not usually bought and sold. Slavery does not exist. It did exist in Rome, and there was a market price for buying a slave. There are market prices for an hour of different types of work, etc., and that enables us to make calculations and determine personnel costs, etc. Now, we are going to confine our analysis to an imaginary construction. That is, we're going to take another step in our process of formulating economic science, and we're going to make an assumption. We're going to study the laws of economics which operate in a process of social cooperation we will call the market economy. The market economy is a social system based on the division of knowledge and on the private ownership of consumer and producer goods and services. It is a social process which rests on contractual ties. It is a social process in which the state either does not exist because it is unnecessary, or the role of the state is reduced to a minimum and consists of preventing actions that disrupt the peaceful process of social cooperation. Social scientists are debating on whether a monopolistic agency is necessary for this or not. Some people, the minarchists, believe a minimal state is necessary. For what purpose? To prevent crime, to stop it in situ with law enforcement forces, and to punish the perpetrators through the judicial system. Meanwhile, there are other scientists, including yours truly, who believe that an agency which appropriates monopolistic power to provide these services is unnecessary and also highly disruptive. We believe that a constellation of private agencies, of security companies like Prosegur, etc., would prevent, stop, and punish crime far more effectively, in a manner which would be qualitatively better, and would also protect victims far more. At present, the frontiers of scientific research lie in this issue. It is not necessary for you to adopt a stance on it because, practically speaking, a market economy would work in a limited state. As you know, the market is not a place, it is not a thing, it is not an association. The market is synonymous with that process of cooperation we have called society, a vast network of human interactions. Basically, exchange relationships that are reflected in monetary prices, which in turn make economic calculation possible. Such interactions are driven by entrepreneurship, which constantly creates and transmits information, thereby coordinating maladjustments between human beings, and also, through competition, fueling human life without limit. The market continually gives rise to a huge quantity of prices, a constellation of prices, and these are like shooting stars, because no sooner have they taken shape than their only remaining value is historical or archaeological, but they are a guide to action. In other words, if I have seen that in the past, this morning, nickel was bought and sold at a certain price, as an entrepreneur, I can make my estimates and say, well, I have no indication that tomorrow the price of nickel is going to change very significantly. So, practically speaking, tomorrow I will act with the idea that nickel is going to cost me the same as it costs today, and that is very useful as a guide to action. The opposite may also occur. I may say, I have information that there has been an explosion in the mine which was the source of almost all the nickel in the world, and that as a result there is going to be a shortage. So, though nickel has cost a certain amount today, the price may go up tomorrow. I'll take that into account as I act. In both cases, though the prices of the past are history and are of merely archaeological value, when viewed in light of entrepreneurial instinct, they act as a guide for our future actions. Mises says prices are like snowflakes. They fall to the ground and immediately they melt and disappear. But a historical record of them remains to help us in our subsequent actions. At this stage in the course, we know perfectly well what capital goods are. They are higher-order economic goods, which we also termed factors of production. They do not satisfy human needs directly, like consumer goods do, but instead require the involvement of other complementary factors and a period of time before maturing into a consumer good. Traditionally, capital goods have been defined as man-made factors of production to distinguish computers, machines, tools, manufacturing plants, vehicles, trucks, etc. from land or natural resources, though practically speaking, natural resources are also higher-order economic goods. The difference between a capital good and a natural resource lies in whether or not the good or resource wears out with use. A plot of land is indestructible as a stretch of ground, the plot of land where a building stands. While the building is a capital good, the plot of land is a natural resource. The building does wear out, though slowly. Depreciation refers to the deterioration of a capital good due to its use in the production process. Depreciation can be physical. It can result from natural wear, because building fronts wear out, roofs are damaged, plumbing must be repaired every so many years. Depreciation can also be owing to technical obsolescence. In other words, though a building may not physically wear out, it may become outdated with respect to the needs of human beings. Both technical obsolescence and physical wear lead to the depreciation of a capital good. In contrast, a natural resource does not depreciate. It is indestructible. It lasts indefinitely. What is the difference between a capital good, for example, an adjustable wrench is a capital good, a computer is a capital good, a truck is a capital good, a factory is a capital good? What is the difference between a capital good and capital? Well, it's very simple. A capital good consists of a concrete good, while capital is an abstract concept, an economic calculation. Capital refers to the estimated value at market prices of capital goods. Do you know the etymological origin of the term capital? It derives from the Latin caput, meaning head. Why is the estimated value at market prices of capital goods called capital? Because it takes a mental effort to estimate, through economic calculation, accounting, at market prices, the value of the capital goods at our disposal. There is only one social system which permits such an estimate. It is the social system of a market economy, based on the spontaneous process of voluntary cooperation, in which both money and voluntary exchanges are present. Therefore, the most scientifically appropriate term for this marvelous system, which makes life in society possible and enables us to make an estimate in our heads, caput, capitis, of capital, or the value at market prices of capital goods, is capitalism. That is precisely why we call it the capitalist system, or capitalism, for it is the only system that permits thanks to the existence of a voluntary social process in which capital goods are constantly being exchanged for money and market prices take shape, it is the only system that permits economic calculation, that is, the estimation at market prices of the value of the capital goods at entrepreneurs' disposal. Entrepreneurs are continually estimating the value at market prices of different combinations of capital goods, and when they find disparities, they immediately react to maladjustments by buying low and selling high, and obtaining a profit by the process we've studied. There is a constant reshuffling or recombination of capital goods towards those uses with the highest market value, as estimated through economic calculation. This wonder is permitted only by the capitalist system, thus its name. I want to emphasize this because a process of semantic corruption has sprung from left-wing ideologies hostile to civilization. Generation after generation, those who support these ideologies have insisted on labeling as capitalist everything bad, perverse and corrupt. That is capitalism, and everything good is socialism. Not so, ladies and gentlemen. After today's class, it should be clear to all of you that we need to push up the value of the term capitalism, because it is the most scientifically appropriate term, and also the most attractive to define this system of social cooperation. We should all be very proud to say we are capitalists. So, are you a socialist? No, I'm a capitalist. Nowadays, the word capitalist carries terrible associations. Capitalism is seen as a dire disgrace. In fact, this semantic corruption has become so influential that it affects even the most important moral leaders. For example, consider Centesimus Annus, an encyclical written by Pope John Paul II. Section 42 of the encyclical serves as an illustration. The former pope poses this question: in light of the past, which social system is the best or the least detrimental, socialism or capitalism? And he answers that if by capitalism we mean a market economy subject to general legal principles, with voluntary exchanges, a system fueled by the entrepreneurial spirit, etc., then undoubtedly the capitalist social system is the most moral. But he immediately adds that nevertheless it would be more fitting to call it something other than capitalism, something like business economy, market economy, or free economy. And why shouldn't we call it capitalism? After all, we've just seen that that is the most appropriate term, scientifically speaking. There has been such a process of semantic corruption that capitalism has become a politically incorrect term, and I would like all of us to work together to gradually overthrow this dictatorship of political correctness, and explain that, in scientific terms, the most appropriate name for the market economy is the capitalist economic system. Now, gross income refers to the value, at market prices, of what a capital good produces. Suppose an entrepreneur has a Renault, and it's a taxi. It is a capital good. If the capital good brings in 6,000 euros a month, the gross monthly income of the capital good is 6,000 euros. However, what would happen if the taxi driver spent the 6,000 euros? Would that be smart of him? Remember that capital goods depreciate, and the taxi will gradually wear out. It will last 5 years, but at the end of 5 years, the taxi is going to fall apart. If the taxi driver spends the gross income, he is consuming the taxi. He may live very comfortably on 6,000 euros a month, but after 5 years, he's going to lose his taxi and his job. Therefore, we need to introduce the concept of net income. Net income is the amount of gross income which can be used without the loss of capital. Hence, gross income minus the accounting amount corresponding to depreciation or amortization equals net income. If I use more than my net income, I am consuming capital. It's like the story of the ant and the grasshopper. In the short term, I may live more comfortably, but I am consuming capital. If the opposite is true, and I use less than my net income, I am saving, and that will permit me to increase my capital goods, and be richer in the future. I repeat, it is always necessary to save at least the accounting amount corresponding to depreciation or amortization. in order to maintain our standard of living intact and keep capital from disappearing? Are there capital goods in North Korea? In other words, my question is, in North Korea, are there manufacturing plants? Are there trucks? Are there cranes? Yes or no? Yes, without a doubt. In communist countries there are capital goods. But what about capital? How did we define capital? We said that capital is an abstract concept, an economic calculation. We defined it as the estimated value, at free market prices, of capital goods. Does capital exist in those countries? No, because there is no free market, and therefore market prices do not take shape, and entrepreneurs cannot estimate the value of their capital. This is precisely the reason socialism is impossible, because economic calculation is impossible under such conditions. Entrepreneurs act blindly. They cannot recombine the factors of production to achieve what they value most. And this would be true even if we accepted that they should pursue the goals the North Korean dictator values most. These entrepreneurs are completely in the dark because they cannot make calculations. Consumers are not omniscient. We consumers, any of us, as human beings, men and women, when we consume, are not gods. We do not know all the alternatives which are available, and which the market is constantly creating ex novo. New products with new features, new characteristics, subtle differences in quality and price. Consumers need information. We need to be continually provided with new information about the alternatives that arise. Not only that, however, we also need to be persuaded, to be convinced, to be given advice. Convince me that this product is the best. This takes place constantly in the business world and in all human actions. Let's say I'm a girl's suitor, that I want her to fall in love with me and marry me. Well, the girl has many suitors, and she likes to be loved, but she is not omniscient. She needs her suitors to advertise themselves, to send her messages. How does one send a message? Well, I don't know. Traditionally, a bouquet of flowers, or would you like to go out with me tonight? Any of the usual methods. And the girl lets herself be loved. Hey, convince me you're better than Tom, Dick or Harry. And each suitor, in one way or another, displays his personality and tries to win the girl over. We are always advertising ourselves, you know, and vice versa. The girls are too. If not, why do you think they wear high heels or a perfume that turns all heads when they walk by? Why do you think they wear makeup and get dressed up? They are advertising themselves. We are constantly advertising ourselves. Isn't that so? Well, this process is as old as mankind. The social process cannot operate without advertising. Advertising fulfills the function of transmitting information to consumers in an attractive manner, giving them advice and persuading them. Depending upon the environment in which we move, advertising will be of one sort or another. What is advertising like, specifically in the business world? Well, that's very easy to find out. Simply turn on the TV and watch the commercials for the goods and services advertised. What is advertising like? Well, the first characteristic Mises mentions is that it is normally shrill, noisy, coarse and puffing. In fact, when the intellectuals of the moment turn on the television and see the commercials, they end up disgusted. Blech! What a lack of delicacy! What a lack of culture! Why is advertising shrill, noisy, coarse and puffing? Well, basically there are two reasons. Because it must attract attention, and because the people advertising is aimed at on a massive scale are not these intellectual elitist snobs. The vast majority of the people on the receiving end of advertising are themselves shrill, noisy, coarse and puffing. And if we watch one of those garish programs that are always full of grisly details about other people's lives, what do you call those shows? Tabloid television. People say the owners of television channels are to blame for tabloid TV. The scoundrels are poisoning us with trash. No, ladies and gentlemen, it's that the people who watch it are trashy. Yes, and if not, they would not watch it. In fact, I must confess that at one point I took a liking to it myself. I used to get home really late, at 3:30, and there was a cheap show on Telecinco called Aquí hay tomate, and I loved it. I used to forget about everything when Aquí hay tomate was on. That means there's a little trashiness in yours truly as well. Anyway, that's why advertising is shrill, noisy, coarse and puffing. Second, advertising costs are part of the cost of producing any good. Practically speaking, they are like transportation costs. What difference is there between physically transporting potatoes from Murcia to Madrid and letting people know through an advertisement that there are potatoes in Madrid? There's really no difference. Both are costs in the production process. Now, commercial advertising has another very important characteristic, and that is that it permits experimentation. You might be deceived by an ad the first time or the second, but not the third or the fourth. Here's a typical ad. Hello, Mum. Which of these two laundry detergents do you prefer? Here we have an ordinary detergent, and here we have Ariel. May I have a shirt, please? The presenter takes the shirt. We're going to wash this shirt using the ordinary detergent. Then he pulls the shirt out and holds it up. And in the ad, the shirt is all grey. Now we're going to wash the shirt with Ariel. We put it into the machine, and when we take it out, it's a brilliant gleaming white. Then the presenter asks the lady, Mom, which do you prefer? This one or this one? And the lady, who is the typical plump middle-aged housewife, so all the women watching the program identify with her, says, well, I prefer Ariel. Ah, so you want Ariel? Well, listen, I'll trade you 2 bottles of this ordinary detergent for that bottle of Ariel. No, I want my Ariel. How about 3 bottles? No, I'll take the Ariel. Well, everyone who sees the ad ends up convinced that Ariel is the ultimate laundry detergent. And we all head to the store to buy some. We go to the market and we buy Ariel. Then we put it into our washing machine. We turn it on and suddenly there is a terrible racket. The machine explodes. Tons of soap suds come pouring out. We flood all the neighbors' apartments. Our clothes are destroyed. Do you think any advertising campaign will ever get us to buy Ariel again? No. And that is the third characteristic. Commercial advertising permits experimentation, which results in the following peculiar effect. Only good products tend to be advertised in the market, for if the product is bad and you spend money on advertising, and yet when consumers try the product they decide against it, then the investment in advertising is a net loss. Thus the tendency in the market, the law of tendency, which carries no guarantee, just a tendency, is that only good products are advertised. These are the only products which, when sold, enable the entrepreneur to recover the cost of the advertising investment. I repeat, in the free market, and there lies the great wonder, advertising permits experimentation. If you do not like a product, you can stop buying it. In contrast, there is a perverse, toxic sort of advertising which does not allow people to experiment or stop buying. The top architect of this kind of advertising was a German man named Goebbels, who invented political propaganda. Well, he didn't really invent it, it's older than that. Even Julius Caesar and Pericles engaged in it. Ladies and gentlemen, the truly dangerous sort of advertising is political advertising. Advertising that permits no experimentation. Advertising financed by public money. For once you have voted people into office, they can do whatever they want to for 4 years. You can't bring a lawsuit against them and say, hey, you did not honor the promises you made me. You went back on your word. It's ironic. If it were really necessary to monitor, regulate and protect citizens from a type of propaganda, it would be political propaganda, which should be prohibited. Nevertheless, political propaganda is not regulated, but the authorities insist on continually regulating business propaganda. For instance, it is forbidden to advertise cigarettes, and if you produce them, you must print a warning this big on the package. Let's see, are there any smokers in class? Smoking can kill. Well, thank goodness it doesn't say smoking will kill you. Smoking may reduce blood flow and causes impotence. Now there's a convincing warning for you. Damn, it causes impotence. Hell, I didn't know that. Here you go. Hey man, I'm sorry if you're impotent. He does look a little limp, doesn't he? Well, he smokes. They add insult to injury. They force the very producer to warn that his own product causes impotence. Just what we needed. And this is a free society? There should be a mandatory warning. Voting for Zapatero or Rajoy causes impotence. Just imagine. Everybody would tear their hair out. But what are you saying? That goes against the freedom of speech, etc. Well, at least in the case of cigarettes, people can learn for themselves through experience. Maybe his father smoked all his life and died of cancer, as happened to my grandfather. That convinced me to quit smoking for good. I learned through experience. Goebbels said, "A lie repeated 1,000 times becomes a truth." If you repeat and repeat and repeat a lie, it becomes a truth. People are manipulated through political propaganda. I've drawn a contrast between the two types so that you will see how perverse political propaganda is and how fruitful business propaganda is.